of the night and final speaker is Stacey d'Erasmo, who is a very beloved figure in the New York literary world. To give you an idea of just how far and wide her work has appeared, it's the New Yorker, it's New York Times Magazine, it's the New York Book Review, it's Book Forum, and she's the author of many novels, and as well as nonfiction, also recipient of many fellowships. I mean, very much a wonderful, lauded writer, and also actually gave one of the pivotal lines in the Limerick. I just want you to know that. It was she who came up with sat on the throne and called it her own. Yeah, that was Stacey. It was very good. And interestingly, though, she also calls herself a magpie. This is Stacey in her own words. I think she was referring to her new novel, Complicities, which comes out next week. And this is Stacey. She says, "I am a magpie when it comes to material and inspiration. I'm always walking around collecting overheard conversation, incidents, images, sounds, fantasies, and saving them for future use." So it's sort of fascinating that two of our writers this evening own up to that, because I think actually we all do it. It's just it's how we get our inspiration. But as I said, it's wonderful to have her tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Stacey d'Erasmo. Hello.
So I'm going to tell you a story about research. Sounds exciting, right? In my novels, there's usually something I have to do, somewhere I have to go, just to get it right or right enough. So I wrote a novel where the main character went to a little town outside of Oaxaca. So I went to a little town outside of Oaxaca, and I took this bus up and up and up this mountain. And I wrote another novel where the main character was a former indie rock star on a comeback tour. And at a certain point in writing that novel, I thought, okay, I really need to go on tour with a band, and which is harder to do than you might think, actually. But finally, I ran into this guy that I knew who was the lead singer in the band Scissor Sisters, and he said, "You can come with us. We're going on a comeback tour through Europe, which is where my character was going." So I went off with them. I was on the buses and the planes and the trains. And when you tour with a band, there are always a lot of people around. And every now and then, probably partly because I was a little older than a lot of the people there, someone would turn to me and they would say, "Well, who are you?" And I would say, "I'm the novelist." And they would be like, "Okay," like every band tours with its own novelist. But it was great, and I got all these details that I never would have gotten otherwise, like on the tour bus at night, if you're traveling through the night, there are all these bunks, and everyone puts their shoes right outside their bunk, so there's this corridor full of everybody's shoes, which was a great image. And another time I was in a car with a bunch of people, and one of them was the singer Peaches, and she said to me, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm the novelist." And she said, "Right, because every tour is like a story that you're continually trying and failing to tell." And I was like, "That's brilliant." And I just ran and wrote that down. It's like, that's fantastic. So in the novel that I wrote most recently, The Complicities, which is for sale in the lobby, a big part of it is this whale stranding. And I didn't know anything about whales or sea creatures or anything. I could swim, but that's really about it. But from the very beginning, I knew that this whale stranding would really matter. I had this very, very clear image in my mind of a woman standing on a beach and a big, in front of a big whale in distress, and the whale stranding causes the main character to do something very important that it actually turns out to be a bit of a mistake. So I really needed to kind of get this I needed to get this whale stranding. So I looked around and I read all about whale strandings, and I found a marine mammal organization out on Long Island. And one day my partner and I drove out there so I could interview this marine mammal expert. And she was fantastic. And at a certain point I said to her, well, okay, so just let me know when this is happening and I'll come out and, take notes. And she said, no. And I said, no, but it's for my novel. And she said, no, trained personnel only, because they do not want you there. You can hurt the whale can hurt you. And I said to her, no, but it's really important because it's for my novel. And she said, no. And I thought, okay, well, I can get around that. And I put a Google alert on my email, and I kept jumping on all the Google alerts. But every time one came up anywhere near me, it was already over because they don't want you there. And they don't tell anyone in the news until it's over. And I thought, okay, well, I can get around that. And my partner and I drove up to New Bedford, Massachusetts, to the Whaling Museum, and I looked at all these big skeletons of whales, and my partner got up onto an exhibit where he wasn't supposed to be and got some whale oil for me to smell. And I looked at more pictures, and I interviewed more people, and I wrote. But I really thought, okay, someone is going to let me do this because it's for my novel. But no one did. I finished the book. We sold it to a publisher. I started working on revisions. The Google alerts kept coming in. There was one in New Zealand. There was one in Baja. And I thought, okay, how long would it take to fly to Baja? But it would be useless because it would already be over. So I faked it as well as I could. And pretty much I gave up. And I also thought, what did it really matter? Because how many of you have ever been at a whale stranding, and how would you really know the difference? And then it was last summer, and it was really, really hot. And my partner and I were supposed to have this incredible trip to this life-changing art installation in New Mexico, but then it was Delta, and I had a little medical scare and some surgery, and it was fine, but that was it for the life-changing art installation in New Mexico. And by now, my final revisions were due in 2 weeks. And my mother lives in Delaware, in a beach town in Delaware. She was going away. And we were like, okay, we'll go to Delaware. It's not the life-changing art installation, but there'll be air conditioning. It won't be our house that we've been in since the pandemic started. We can take the dog. So we sat in my mother's house, and I worked on my revisions, and my partner did his work. It was okay, nothing special. We took the dog to the beach. But then one day my partner came into where I was working, and he said, you need to look at this. And I knew that it had to be a big deal because he knows that if he interrupts me when I'm working, it's like, die. So he showed me a Facebook page of the little local paper, and there was a whale stranding happening right then, not over. It was at a beach. It was at a beach that we went to almost every day, and it seemed like it was in kind of a place around this beach that we wouldn't be able to get to without a boat. But we thought, okay, we'll just get there anyway. And I was like, we have to go right now, let's go. And so we, it's for my novel, so we jumped in the car and we raced toward that beach, and we screeched to a stop and started walking up over a dune. And then as we got up over the dune, I saw this enormous tail, and it was going up and down. And the whale was there, right there. We raced down the beach, and there were all these people, and the whale was like not even to the bar. It was right there. It was enormous. enormous. The tail went up and down, and the whale spouted, and I began to cry. And everyone on the beach who wasn't working directly with the whale was dead silent, absolutely quiet. I started taking notes like crazy, and all I could think was, please live. Because he obviously wanted to live. I have never in my life been that close to a sentient being that big with that kind of life force. I didn't know it right then, of course, but it was a fin whale. It was 50 feet long. It was 20 tons. It's the second largest mammal in the world. There was nothing that I could do but take notes and look. We stood there for hours with everyone else, and then we finally left, and we said, we'll come back tomorrow, and we'll do something to help. The next day it was really brutally hot, and I went there first by myself. But now there was yellow tape keeping people very far back from the whale. And there were a lot of people, and there were cops, and so I went down to where the yellow tape was, and someone told me, well, they were going to have to put him down, but he died on his own just recently. So I ducked under the yellow tape, and I started walking down the beach, and this cop came out, and he said, ma'am, get behind the yellow tape. And I said, no, I'm a novelist. It's for my novel. And he said, ma'am, get behind the yellow tape. And I kind of made a face, but secretly, I didn't really mind getting behind the yellow tape because I really didn't know if I could stand it. Because yesterday he had been alive, and now he was dead. And I really didn't know if I could do this. I backed up behind the yellow tape. There's another thing about a whale stranding that I knew, but that I had never seen myself. And that is when the whale dies, and most of them who strand actually do die, the scientists and the biologists really need to know what happened. And so they have to do an autopsy. And at a certain point later that day, the surf turned red. And I held up my phone camera like this because I couldn't really look through it. It was so hot, and I did not have words for what I was, except I had not known. I thought I knew because of all my research, but I didn't know. I didn't know at all. And I thought, why aren't we singing? Why aren't we kneeling? A great being has passed, and we need to help him on his journey. I kept taking notes, standing next to the ocean. Later that day, my partner and I went back and sat in the house, and we didn't talk for a long time. We just sat there. I had nothing to say. Of course, after that, I went in and I did a lot of revisions on the novel. But now there's something that I know, and it isn't for my novel because I don't think I have words for it, and I never will. That's research. Thank you.